Welcome, everyone. I hope you have a great start of the term so far. What I want to do in this video here is just go over my programming requirements so that you can get the highest grade possible. Now, fully understand that C++ could care less about any of my programming requirements, but anywhere that you work as a programmer, you're going to have business rules. So it's always a good idea to learn to be disciplined in your programming. I'm going to attempt to do that by giving you some extra items that you really want to do when you submit your code to me. So let's go and begin with what's required, and then I'll follow up with not required, but recommended. So the very first thing is you're going to want to put your name, obviously your first name and your last name on the very top of the program. You're going to put the assignment name. It could be activity 2-1, could be what's your bugs or whatever the name of the program is that you're turning in, and then just a brief description of the program. This program will get the radius and calculate the area of a circle or something similar to that. All variables should be declared on a separate line. Now, I totally understand that C++ could care less about it. I also understand that Zybook shows you how to do it that way as well, but it is not good programming. Because it's allowed to do doesn't mean it's a very good thing to do. So let's go and also look at the next line. All variables should be initialized. Now, the reason why I make a big point about that is you're not guaranteed to have any variable initialized regardless of what you're using as a compiler. I use Visual Studio, regular Visual Studio. Some people use Visual Studio Code. Some people use Eclipse. There's all kinds of things that you can go out there, code base, and a bunch of other things. There's no guaranteeing that every single variable that you declare, when you declare it, is going to be initialized. So my motto is it's always better to do something that you don't need to do than not to do something that you needed to do. An example could be Visual Studio is very good as you try to use a variable that doesn't have a value in there. But other compilers may not. So you may try to do something like total equals something blah, 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 or total plus equals in there where you're actually recalculating the variable. If it doesn't have an initialization in it, you could get an error in logic in there. So let's go and make sure that you do that. All variables are commented with its purpose. Now that's really very important because you're doing coding in here and you may be looking at somebody else's code and they have no idea about comments, so you don't have any idea what it's for. So you go in there and you look at the code and I'm not sure what is this variable for. Sometimes they're very descriptive and it's very self-explanatory, but it's always better to do it in there. Then all variables should use camel case. So I've broken it down for you. Now I totally understand that camel case does allow you to put a underscore in the beginning. I prefer that you do not do that. I also prefer that you do not put an underscore in the middle of a word. So let's just go over how I would like you to do it. First word should be all lowercase, beginning with a lowercase letter. And then each other word begins with a capital letter in here. So, and I give you an example here, example hours worked in here. Don't do hours underscore worked, especially if you do a lowercase letter. Make sure that you're using camel case, which does have every word except for the first word capitalized in here. And I put in here, I don't recommend to do it, but if you do it, then make sure that you still capitalize the lowercase or the second word in here. Now, again, whatever style you develop, you should be consistent. For instance, if you do hours underscore worked in one word, one variable, do it in all of them. Be consistent. Constants need to be all uppercase letters, and then you have an underscore between the words, such as max students. The reason why you uppercase them is you know right off the bat that is a constant. Any user-defined item, such as a structure, should begin with a capital letter. This lets you know that it's a user-defined item and not a regular variable. And then this is very important. This is one that I'm really very strict on. Each CIN needs to have a separate prompt without an endl. Now, I totally understand that if you go into Zybooks and you put in a separate prompt, it marks you off. But I will show you how to fix that in the video itself when I get into Visual Studio over here. And then don't put an end out because you want everything to be on the same line. Makes it easier to see for the user. All functions should have the purpose of the function. This function will add numbers together to get the sum and the average or whatever it is. And then you want to use sensible inline comments. Something like declaring variables is really not a meaningful requirement or not a meaningful comment. So you want to make sure that you're putting in something that's very meaningful in here. So now I have some things that are recommended but not fully required in this class. However, when you're doing functions, it's always best to have a function prototype. And it actually is easier to declare the prototype because then you can have it create the function for you. I'll show you that when I get to Visual Studio. Put a parentheses around each calculation. The main reason for that is clarity, and it's easier to make a mistake without parentheses in here. Put in a comment after each closing brace to identify what the brace is closing. Again, you'll see that later on, especially when you're getting into nested loops. And use an endl instead of the new line character or the escape character. The reason being is the escape character does go to the next line, same as an endl, but it doesn't clear the buffer. So if you're having multiple end lines, you're going to have a whole bunch of stuff in there. So at least make sure you have at least one end line every series here. So let's go, and best thing to do is just put it all the time in here. And let's see what we have in here. So, and when we get to classes, you'll just make a little bit more sense in here. A header file should have class variables. So you're going to have a program that's going to have 3 files. It's going to have a header file, a class file, and then the main program in here. So that is this part of the Word document. You'll see that posted in the announcement. Now I'm going to go on to the actual video itself that's going to go and put these into practice.